introduction purposes, for those who don't know me, my name is Rick Howard. I'm a circuit court judge. I've been doing this now for 17 years. I was prosecutor beforehand for 10 years in 2 different circuits. I was a defense attorney, death qualified, for a total of 12 years. And now I've been enjoying this practice and this avocation as a judge. We were asked to put together something for Constitution Week, or Constitution Day. This is, I think, the first time this has ever been done. So you're at the beginning, okay, just like the Constitution. You're at the beginning of this process. And let me step away from this so I don't block the view. Plus, I'm wider than the chair. But the idea is to try to explain, not give you an esoteric conversation about, you know, what was Hamilton's regard, what was Monroe's regard, and everyone knows that Madison had a lot to do with this. Oh my gosh. We're not into that type of thing. We're trying to explain in summary what I've held up here in my, and we have the PowerPoint coming up later. But the 3 branches of government, whether you're in the state court system or the state system, you are in fact, everybody in this room is a citizen of both the state and the federal system. And everything is broken up into 3 groups: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. And we do have Dr. and Representative Masulo coming. He's going to be coming a little later on in this presentation, and how laws are made, which I thought is going to be really cool. But you know, he's got to balance his very, very important practice of medicine along with his very important responsibilities as a elected member of the House of the State Representatives up in Tallahassee. When I try to talk to either groups, whether they're younger people or older people, the issue becomes one of blank. Oh God, is Howard talking? He always talks. But the idea is just trying to understand that every part of government can be fit into these 3 things. And when you look at both the state constitution and the federal constitution, you can see that Article 1 starts off with the legislative branch. I can remember from law school the esoteric conversations made by the professors of which is the most important branch. They would say, well, the legislative branch, because they control the dollars and cents. They do so much more than that. The executive branch is really the most powerful because they've got the enforcement mechanism. They are the police power. They've got the, the police, the prisons, all that kind of stuff is set up around the executive. So that's really the most powerful branch of the government. And then you've got the argument, well, the judicial branch is very powerful because we've got one big bullet in our gun. We've got one big bullet in our judicial gun, and that is the judges have the power to declare something unconstitutional. We should never pull that trigger unless there's something clearly unconstitutional to be resolved. So we're supposed to do everything we can to uphold the constitutionality of any statute that comes down from the legislature. I think most forward-thinking professors now would definitely know that, in fact, the legislature is the most powerful branch of the government, not just because it controls the money, it controls the budget, but it represents the will, the collective will of the people. In a democratic republic, or that's what we have. We don't have a pure democracy in the state of Florida or the United States of America. We elect representatives like Dr. Masulo who go up there and say, you make these decisions, you make these important decisions, you decide what the tax rate should be, you decide what the law should be. Oh, you got your the yardstick.
Yes, sir.
This example was used for me years ago when I first became a judge, and I thought it was very important. It was from Judge Buddy Alls who gave me this suggestion. Whenever you're talking about the law, let's face it, I do felonies, I do criminals, so it's kind of interesting, it's kind of cool, you see all kinds of interesting cases. But the vast majority of the cases in this courthouse are civil. Whether it's adoptions, whether it's dependency cases, it's family law cases, it's probate cases, it's guardianship cases, it's slip and fall cases. And so what was used to me to discuss, Judge Alls had said, who was once the former legendary senior judge of the whole circuit, he would say, Rick, the law is like a yardstick. It's 36 inches long, but only 2 inches of it's criminal. Everything else is civil. You understand that? It's civil. And while the 2 inches gets a whole lot of concern, small claims court, when we think of the things in county court, they occupy a tremendous amount of overall numbers. So people have to understand that when you talk about the Constitution, it's not all about criminal, but so much of the interesting part of it is focusing on that. Now, and the judicial branch will have a PowerPoint when we're all ready to set that up. So that you don't get bored with me talking, I'm going to defer a little of this to Mr. Shore and let him team teach, as they say.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Blake Shore. I'm an assistant state attorney. What that makes me is I am part of the executive branch. The executive branch has basically three primary purposes that are the goals of it. First off, the first goal that we have to do is enforce the laws. That's where I come into play, along with the Sheriff's Office, along with Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and all the various other agencies that do law enforcement throughout the state and throughout the counties. The other thing that the executive branch is very focused on is providing services. And things that you may not realize fall under the executive branch actually do. There's the Department of, the Department of Elderly Services, the Department of Education. All of those sorts of things fall under the executive branch. The executive branch also is not just a local, it is statewide. Obviously, the first person you think of when you hear the word the executive branch is probably the governor within the state. On a federal level, the first person you think of is definitely the President of the United States. But that is, they focus and serve these purposes throughout the state. There's also more local ones, such as the elected state attorney, Brad King, who is oversees the prosecution in 5 counties. Along with, in each individual county, you have the sheriff, who's elected to provide the services of enforcing the laws in just that jurisdiction. The other thing that we, as a governmental agency, or that the executive branch tries to do, is the other purpose is that we are here to protect people's rights. What that means, everybody has rights, whether they're brand new or more recent, not brand new. More recent rights, such as Miranda rights or the right to have an attorney represent you during a criminal case. There are also rights that have been in existence since the Constitution was passed and the Bill of Rights was passed. Everybody has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Along those lines, or the right to be free from unwanted searches and seizures by law enforcement or the government. So, as prosecutors, the first thing that we do is we make sure that the laws are being enforced. Along those lines, we don't get to pick and choose which laws we think are appropriate to enforce. The government, the legislature, like Dr. Mazzullo, passed the laws that we as prosecutors have to go out, or law enforcement have to go out and deal with. And we have to make sure that people are abiding by them, and if somebody is caught breaking them, that person is arrested and prosecuted in order to be held to account, accountable for their actions. Throughout the system, there are items, or there's the ability to also provide those services to the people who need the help, to the victims of those crimes. A prime example of that is one of the services that I did not know existed until I became a prosecutor, which would be the Attorney General's victims' right, or victims' compensation. If you're the victim of a crime and you receive some medical injury, some injuries that require medical treatment, you could apply to the Attorney General's office to get some of that treatment paid for, or in order to try and help get that treatment paid for, in order so that you're not in debt from being victimized in that crime. That also requires that the sheriff's office go out and make arrests of people that are found to be violating the law. Those are the types of things that, as the executive branch, we are obligated to enforce. We also do not get to pick and choose which laws are enforced. Once a law is on the books, if we're able to prove that a crime has occurred, and we have to go out and investigate it, and then we have to go forward and figure out if we can prosecute it or not. Along the same lines, once a law has gone into effect, office of, well, the executive branch has to figure out how in order to carry out the purpose of that law. So, and this also applies on how those services are provided. That's why we have so many different branches, like the Department of Education. Their job is to regulate the teachers and all that. But that isn't just the sole, that is not all that they do. They're not the only ones that decide when somebody is or is not able to be a teacher, or how the education funds and those sorts of things are distributed. That also happens on a more local level when you have like the school board, which also would be an elected office. They also handle distributing and making sure that those services are accomplished in the best way possible. In order to do that, instead of everybody just getting to do whatever they want, they are rules and guidelines that are come up with in order to properly make sure those things are done. That is called the administrative code. That's essentially a way for the government to divide up and to make sure that there is some consistency on how things are handled. Once something happens, if there's an issue with the way an administrative code is written, that actually goes back to the judges. If somebody has an issue with the way an administrative code is enforced, we are supposed to do that without any sort of, services are supposed to be given out without any sort of an issue based on any sort of race or sex or any other issue like that, a protected class. So what happens is, if somebody feels that that either the administrative code did not provide them the services that they need, if they were not provided the services that they needed, they would then be able to file a court case, which could eventually wind up in front of a judge, who then, as the judge mentioned, may or may not, if the situation was appropriate, find that could be an unconstitutional, an unconstitutional situation.
Let me give you an example, if I could, of a long, torn, probably an extreme example of an unconstitutional situation. Please understand, the canons of ethics prohibit me from talking about any pending cases, any pending constitutional issues that might be coming up. So I'm not trying to be all guarded for myself. I think that's one of the most frustrating things whenever I watch Senate confirmation hearings up in Washington, where you have a judge, an experienced federal judge who's been there forever, and the judicial panels are asking him, and they're all attorneys, and they're all United States senators, and they're always asking these judges to commit to something. They should know, A, the judges can't commit to anything, and the judges know they can't commit to anything other than to follow the law. So the senators, go through this song and dance, and they ask them to commit to things, whether it's on a woman's right, reproductive rights, or it's whether or not a certain kind of a marriage between parties is going to be legitimized, or something like that. You can't answer those kind of questions, and if you do, you shouldn't be wearing robes. That's just that simple. But I guess what I overlooked at the beginning of my little presentation, and Blake got on, I mentioned it. Legislature writes the law, they enforce the law, we apply the law in individual cases. So you have a situation where the state of Florida has decided that a particular class cannot enjoy the benefits of citizenship because of their religious component. Okay, that happened when? Back in 1935 in Nuremberg. So we have something like that that's clearly an unconstitutional situation. Why it failed, and I have some, I have a whole library about constitutional issues involving the Nuremberg war trials. But the Nuremberg laws basically were promulgated through the Reichstag, and the reason that they were upheld throughout until at least 1945 was there was no judiciary to back them, to turn them to say no, because the German guild, it was the guild of Nazi lawyers, both the lawyers and the judges all had to be members of the party. If you weren't, you lost your right to practice law. That was it. There was nobody. So they took out the judges first. They took out the ability for a small minority to say this ain't right, and they took them out first. And when there was nobody there to take them out, there was a Shakespeare, I know there's smarter people in here than I am, who might know Shakespeare, whether it was Edward I or one of those things written by Shakespeare. And it says, kill all the lawyers. Who's heard of that one? First thing you do is kill all the lawyers. Does anyone know why that is so misunderstood? And of course, we invite questions. You do. Okay, why is that?
Because they wanted to create like an anarchy. Without them, there was no rule to control the society.
Right. That's the bottom line. Is there was this discussion, the idea. I think there was somebody was assassinating some pompous king or something like that, and they said, well, if you want anarchy, if you want derision, if you want to get anything that you want, the first thing you do is kill all the lawyers. And I remember there was a commentator for a paper, not in this courtroom or anything, years ago in another paper that in fact is defunct. And back when I was practicing law and I was allowed to have a formal written opinion, he wrote in the commentary and he said, yeah, Shakespeare got it right. First thing you do is kill all the lawyers and you don't have any problems. And I reminded him that was the mantra of Hitler and Mao Zedong and all the other famous people. And he and I got in quite a contest of words back in the day. And it was sad. It was sad because he was considered to be a man of letters, and it was just profoundly ignorant for him to talk about it. And I actually quoted the play to him. Let's see what else we have. I didn't mean to get in the way on that, but I just have to talk about, because when you think about, there was also a scene from one of the Star Wars movies. I don't know if you remember when everyone was clamoring for the Emperor. The Emperor was going to be, whatever, and everyone's going to. That was basically a scene directly out of the Nuremberg, 1935, when Adolf Hitler was not only he had been made Chancellor in '33, but when he received all of the powers from the Reichstag. They gave up all powers because they said he can offer security, he can offer guarantees, he can offer peace, he can offer this, and they voluntarily gave up their rights to him. And look what the result was. So, although all of those, I've read the Nuremberg laws, I have various copies of them, and they're just nauseating to read them. And they were approved by a unanimous Reichstag.
The other thing that is very important for the executive branch is that we enforce the laws and we bring cases in front of the judge for him to make a decision, whether it's Judge Howard or any of the other judges here. And through that, that isn't just criminal laws. That's what most people think of when you think of the executive branch, but there is also civil aspects that the government actually is involved in. One of the easiest ones to come up with is the Department of Children and Families. That's the people that go through and actually can take away children if they're not being cared for appropriately. That is done through a civil proceeding, though, in front of a judge who then makes the decision whether or not the state has met its burden. So it is not just criminal laws that get enforced by the executive branch. There are also other laws that we handle. The ones that are easiest for us to think about, though, is criminal laws, because that's usually what you see. Everybody has seen Law and Order or any of those types of shows and come across those. The thing to keep in mind is that the executive branch actually represents the people of the state of Florida. While a person may be victimized during a crime, that person is not, as a state attorney, I do not represent, or as an assistant state attorney, I do not represent that victim. My purpose there is to ensure that the people of the state of Florida are that justice is done for the people of the state of Florida. What that means is, and that may sound very hard to understand. What that means, though, is that if I have a particular victim who is consistently and constantly being beat up and hurt by her significant other, when that victim comes to me and says, "Hey, Mr. Short, I don't want to do this. He really loves me." That victim, I don't want to see that victim get hurt anymore. The people of the state of Florida don't want to see that person hurt or worry about that person losing their life through those sorts of scenarios. So that's the thing about it. As the executive branch, I represent the people of the state of Florida. I do not just represent that particular victim in their interests. So in order to do that, there are times where I may have a victim telling me, "Hey, I don't want to go forward," but the people of the state of Florida need this person to be protected. And that's the same thing with like DCF, where they may have to come in to a family scenario, and if they can't work something out where the parents are getting the services and taking care of the children in the way that we need them to as a society, where they may eventually have to go in front of a court proceeding to terminate those parental rights. One of the things that was a very good quote, I think, about the type of job that, as a prosecutor, we have, is that justice is served when guilty or convicted and innocent people go free. The job of a prosecutor is justice. And what that means is, one of the things that sticks out to me is what's called Brady evidence. As a prosecutor, I am the only attorney in all of the bar that I'm aware of, and Judge, you correct
I've
me
been
if
on
I'm
both
wrong.
sides of the table, so what's your,
As a prosecutor, I am the only person that if I know something bad, I have to tell the other side.
yes.
That I do not know of any other attorney throughout,
Practice area.
any practice of law that would have to turn over to the other side anything that is bad for us or bad for them. And what that means is that the reason for that is because as a prosecutor, my job is to make sure that there is a sense of fair play and justice throughout the proceedings. And that's part of the judge's job too, is to make sure that we're not doing anything that would not be fair. And that's one of the biggest things that I know about the court system with that. But that also goes into the third aspect of what the executive branch does, which is protecting people's rights. And the examples of that is, as a prosecutor, I review a case when it first comes in order to make sure that there is nothing that has been done to violate that person's rights. The defendant has all of the same rights in the Constitution as any person sitting in this room. And what that means is they have the right to be free from searches and seizures that they shouldn't have, that should not be unless it's validly done. They also have newer rights that the courts have determined and given that we have to be within, which is like the Miranda rights. That they're read and informed of their right to have an attorney present, their right to remain silent if they're being interrogated while they're being detained. As a prosecutor, that is the first thing that I have to do when I read through a case, is to make sure that everything that we did and the evidence that would be coming in from the law enforcement perspective is validly obtained. And what that means is that sometimes, even though it's clear that somebody committed a crime, that if the evidence wouldn't be admissible, that the case has to be can't be proceeded on, that it never makes it into court if there's a violation of those sorts of rights. And those rights come, like I said, they come all the way from the Constitution. Now, we're not the end-all be-all, obviously. That's part of the judge's job also, is when if we file a case, the defense attorney can say that there wasn't, that they felt that there's a rights violation, in which case the judge would have to have, the judiciary would have to have a hearing and make a decision based on that. But those, as a prosecutor, are our obligations, and why I think it is above and beyond what just a regular attorney has to do. And there's actually a special oath that we have to take in order to be a prosecutor, in order to be part of the executive branch, to uphold the Constitution and to make sure that people's rights are protected and that those sorts of things are done.
Let's talk a little bit more, thank you, about one of the issues. I've written this up, I'll come back to this. If I don't, somebody say something and say, hey, Howard, what were you talking about here when you talked about the three most important officers in the county? Because I said you're a federal citizen, you're a state citizen, you're a county citizen, and all of the various branches of government are still broken up into those three issues: executive, judicial, and legislative branch. The county commission is the legislative branch and otherwise. And not too long ago, I watch, everyone knows, I watch Discovery Channel a lot. I watch National Geographic Channel and things like that. And I watched an article, I watched a special about the Freemasons. And interestingly enough, they were talking about, because all you have to do is look on a dollar bill and see there's a lot of, and they talk about codes and conspiracies and about whether what the role is of, there's all kinds of different Latin phrases and things like that on a dollar bill. But that the special I was watching the other day talked about the fact that a lot of the people who signed the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence before that were in fact members of the Freemasons and things like that, and they incorporated some of their rules into this document which had never been seen before, this document called the Constitution. that in fact, some of the interesting talk about fun facts of the Constitution. Fun facts. Fun facts of the Constitution, it has 4,400 words. It is the oldest and the shortest written Constitution of any major government in the world. And one of the things they were pointing out in that article, or that TV show I was watching not too long ago, England, which is where we got our law from, does not have a Constitution. To this day, they don't have a Constitution. They have the common law. Did it go back to 1715 with the Magna Carta? It's hard to say. Did it go back to 1066, even before then? And various permutations after that. There is no Constitution in England, where we took our law from. But in fact, the Constitution is a blueprint. It is a set of laws. And I've maintained, I've said all along, it's the most important document in the secular world. And we talk about the amendments that have been had of it. Now, President Reagan said something really good, and we need to think about this every day. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in our bloodstream. It must be fought for, it must be protected and handed on to them to do the same, or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was to once live in the United States where people were free. We always have to defend it. One of the factors that I frequently, when I'm qualifying a jury, when people come in and we talk about jury selection and I mean, they've been TV shows about it. We know that, where people say, I got to get out of jury service. Jury service is rough. And I'm proud of this comment that I say when I talk to jurors, not to guilt them into this, but understand it is the highest pinnacle of service that a person can be called to, at least in the civilian world. And I tell them, I said, you know, ladies and gentlemen, do any of you all in the military? I'm going to do this to this panel. I'm going to qualify this panel for jury service. Anybody ever been in the military? Okay, thank you for your service. Anybody got family in the military? Thank you for their service, okay? I didn't have the privilege, although I was raised in a military family. My dad, Pearl Harbor survivor, Battle of the Bulge, Bronze Star, back in the day. Okay, so you know what that means. Big stuff. So, and that's probably why he died early. But the bottom line is, you know, he fought the Hun in World War II, and so he was very, very, he instilled this strong message that I'm carrying on to this day. All we're asking for is jurors to come in. We're asking for them to come in air-conditioned comfort, and we'll provide you with a sandwich, okay? You'll hear some interesting cases, whether it's in the civil docket or the criminal docket. This Constitution allows it. And I think I asked you, you're going to do some research on countries that have jury trials?
Yes, sir.
We'll talk about that in a second. I'm giving them a heads up on that. Lead in. This is called team teaching. Okay, so the idea is I'll tell them, I'll say, you know, you overseas? Were you overseas? Some point, sir? Yeah, you, the one who was in the military, you.
No,
Okay, it doesn't matter.
I was
Yeah.
in your infantry for 8 years.
Okay,
I wasn't overseas.
Okay, not a problem, but still, you were available for service. Okay, and your other
Until
family
you're
members.
62 years old, you're available.
Really? Well, I just beat it. No, the
I can
idea.
always call you back.
Okay, well, the idea is that I tell the jurors, I said, you know, and a lot of them, this is going to be an inconvenience to me, blah, blah, blah. I said, you know, ladies and gentlemen, we got boys and girls on the border looking over the Rio Grande into Mexico, looking for drug traffickers and cartel traffickers. And we got them on 24 hours a day, looking south. And we got them north. We got them on the Korean peninsula looking north as missiles are flying overhead. And we expect them to be on duty. Can't we give you the same? Can't we as civilians give you the same? You should be surprised how many people are about to stand up when they say, who wants to be excused from jury service? And then they sit back down. As well they should. As well they should. Because jury service is the highest calling for in civilian government life, as it were. And I'm going to go back to Blake here.
And that's one of the things that is provided by our Constitution that a lot of other countries do not have. There are a few countries such as England, Australia, Canada, and the United States, all of which that have a long-standing tradition of jury trials where people from the community come in order to make the decision ultimately of guilt or innocence. Other countries, though, do not have that. Their Constitution and their government doesn't provide for that. All that they have is essentially either a judge making a decision or a panel of judges, and in some situations a panel of judges and lay people. The one that I thought was very interesting was Germany. They have absolutely no jury trials. The only thing that they have is either a panel of one judge and 2 lay people who are specially appointed for 5-year terms. They are essentially what we come across now as magistrates, which are people that make decisions but don't actually wear the robe, but they are kind of in a quasi-judicial role of decision making. But over there, they have 2 of the lay people and 1 professional judge who will sit in in criminal cases. If it is an extremely serious case, they will have 2 of the lay people and then
Welcome.
3 of the professional judges. In Russia, the only time that you're entitled to a jury would be for a death penalty case. How often do those happen in Russia? Well, the last one, they've not had any of them since 1996. So for over 20 years, they have yet to have a need for a jury trial over there. And if it's not a death penalty case, the only thing you get is a mixed tribunal, just like in Germany, of the professional attorney, lawyers, and laypersons. In Japan, it's the same thing. They only have the mixed tribunal. There is no such thing as just a layperson jury over there. They have 6 lay judges and 3 professional judges who decide guilt, and they also decide sentencing. Here, that's one of the things that the judge gets to tell the jury. It's actually in our jury instructions. He informs them that the only decision that they have to make is whether or not the person is guilty and has committed the crime, or whether or not they're innocent. The sentence is completely determined by the judiciary. But over there in Japan, not only do they decide guilt or innocence, they also decide what the sentence should be. There, only the professional judge is able to make the decision on questions of law and procedure, but you still have the lay judges who are there. That one professional judge generally controls the trial, but for a judgment here, we have to have unanimous jury verdicts. Over there, they have to have a majority jury verdict with at least 1 citizen and 1 professional judge in the majority in order for the verdict to be valid. Some countries have also completely just abolished non-jury jury trials. They have nothing but non-jury trials. South Africa is a prime example. I don't know how many of you remember the Olympian who had...
Blade Runner.
Yes, sir. The Olympian who had lost his legs, he was over there, he had shot his wife. That was one of the things that came up. And that was one of the more interesting things that I saw in some of the clips that were on the news, was that the only person there making the decision was a number of judges who also were able to ask questions and things along those lines. But that's the right to a jury trial is something that is very important, but also something that not only, but is throughout the world not nearly as predominant as we as Americans are used to, because since it is provided to us by our Constitution, both federally and statutorily, and within the state.
From a statistical point of view, and for those of you who are in that mindset, as it were, 90% of the world doesn't do trials, okay? 10% of the world does jury trials, but once again, on the statistical point of view, 10% of the world does jury trials, 90% of that 10% is the United States. Florida is the 4th largest state in the Union. So as such, you got to know, without the math, we do the lion's share equally with probably most of the world. And yes, jury trials are expensive. We talk about jury trials. You're entitled to a jury trial in many of the civil cases. However, they're trying to get away from. They're expensive. There's no doubt. They're time-consuming, no doubt. But nonetheless, it's still so important to have lay people deciding the cases of whether it's in criminal cases of guilt or innocence beyond a reasonable doubt, or in civil cases by the greater weight or preponderance of the evidence. One thing that's always fascinated me is the numbers. Where do you get these numbers from? How come you have like 12 people on a capital case and 6 people on another? How come it used to be you'd have 12 people on every case? Well, at least my research on these type of issues, I'm always trying to figure out the why. It doesn't really say in the Constitution that it's just based upon the law. Remember, there's only 4,400 words, and we have available to you. I keep one of these up on the bench all the time, and every attorney who's practiced in front of me knows that, especially when we get a Fourth Amendment issue, a search and seizure issue, I'll turn to it and say, just read right from the language of over 200 years ago, and say, what does the Constitution say about the Fourth Amendment? And it's just one long sentence. And now I can't find it. It's not that tough to find, Howard. Okay. It's on page such and such. There it is. The right of the, it's one long sentence with a bunch of commas in it. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. And nowhere in there does it say anything about cell phones. Doesn't say anything about your private financial information in there. And, you know, we have the dispute with the Ivy Tower types who want to know if, you know, this is a traditionalist and the Constitution is rock solid. And I've said it before, it's the most important secular document in the world, whether or not it's organic and change. Well, people have to look at this as common sense. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects. Well, in effect, 200 plus years ago, maybe someone was thinking, hey, you know, there's someday we're going to have a Batman-like cell phone or a wrist radio type thing that we can communicate with, so that's going to be secure. Why not? And the beauty of the language and the wordsmiths that presented this gave, I mean, there's whole professors who've written their entire books, libraries full of search and seizure uses, and they're fascinating stuff to hear, and at least handling the criminal cases. At least from the research I've done, is that why do we have 12 people on a jury? Well, there's two theories. One, Old Testament. Two, New Testament. Old Testament says 12 tribes of Israel. That's a magic number. New Testament says 12 apostles. That's where the number 12 comes from. And so that's just something to think about, is because it is a Judeo-Christian not theology, that's the wrong word, basis for the law to decide these issues. So that's at least where the numbers come from. Let's see what else we have. I wrote this up. Let's change directions a little bit because we still have the same branches of the government. Those of us who are legally trained probably were trained through the Socratic method, which you ask questions, then you get answers, and you ask questions more, and it takes forever to go through that. So we kind of have to speed that up for today. I'd like some, you know, indications from the people. I'm not going to write in each one of these, but because my opinion is, you know, I'm the one with the board and I got the big thing here. So just some input on what are the most important county officers in your all's opinion. Anybody, especially the people who are non-legally trained. Who would be the most important, 1, 2, 3, not necessarily in order, that you would think from a county perspective would be? Anybody?
Commissioner?
I think it's Ralph Missoula.
Okay.
Above everybody else I've seen around here for 18 years.
Well, I mean, and he is, but he's not, I'm talking about county. See, he's state official, and he will be here soon, and I want you to ask him a lot of questions. But, yeah, he is in the state. I keep looking for that back door to open. Boy, when it is, it's going to be like, now you're up. But just from, let's say, from county officials. There was somebody else. Yes, sir.
Commissioner?
Okay, that is actually correct. Why? Why?
Because they create county ordinances and
They're the legislature. They're the legislature, yes.
Sheriff?
Correct number 2, at least according to mine and most everyone. Sheriff. And that's what?
The executive branch.
The executive branch. Okay? Now, the next one's going to be a stretch. I doubt, maybe not, maybe this is a pretty smart group. So we got the county commission, who's the legislature. We got the sheriff, he's the executive branch of the government, because he enforces. They set millage rates and things like that. I just gave it away. Who could it be? Who could number 3 be?
The judge.
County judge?
Felony judge.
Huh?
Felony judge.
Felony judge, yeah, I like that.
The
No,
clerk.
because actually I'm a state officer.
I think it should be our new business development director that we're trying to hire to bring all of these jobs to the county.
Okay? Well, you can focus on, but already, I'm talking about county officers. When I tell you this one's going to say, okay, that makes sense. Who can decide? Who can decide how much I'm going to take of your money to fulfill the county commissioner's millage rates? I want
The appraiser.
the property appraiser. And that would be viewed as a judicial branch. Because they're supposed to be neutral, detached. Aren't they nonpartisan? Are they nonpartisan in the county?
I think they are partisan.
Maybe not, I don't know, either way. It is the judicial, and most of the learned people I talk with say because these people set the amount of money, these people enforce the laws, these people are the ones that decide how much your property is worth, so the millage rate is applicable to that. Most people would like to have their millage rate, their tax property as low as possible. They don't want to have to pay the taxes. And like I'm talking about in the 30s and the 40s, it was not uncommon for someone to destroy a business rival, just to set the property appraisal really high on your property, and then you wind up getting kabonged on taxes. But that's the real application, that's the rule. Legislature, executive, judicial branch. What about death penalty? Let's shift gears back to other countries that have that.
Okay. And actually, one of the things to understand about the death penalty, Florida does have the death penalty. We've recently gone through quite a few rounds dealing with the death penalty here within our state. Originally, the death penalty was handled. Ultimately, the judge made a decision on whether or not to put.
And only the judge made the decision.
Yes, sir, and just the judge. The jury would hear the facts and circumstances. They had what was called a penalty phase, and they made a recommendation that the judge could make.
Gave great weight.
Yes, sir, had to give great weight to. And as long as it was a majority recommendation, then that was sufficient for the judge to make the decision with. What happened was, in the past couple of years, the Florida Supreme Court, along with the U.S. Supreme Court, determined that that wasn't actually appropriate. What they said was that the jury actually had to be the jury had to actually make the decision on whether or not somebody should receive life in prison or the ultimate sanction of the death penalty. So what that has led to was then the legislature had to get back involved. They had to go through and change the laws of the state of Florida on how death penalty cases were done. What that also meant was that all the death penalty cases that were being handled at the point or at the state in that point had to basically be put on hold, waiting for that to be waiting for the legislature to resolve that issue. There was input from people in the executive branch on what they thought would be appropriate. That ultimately led to the first law that was passed, which was that the jury had to make a decision of a 10-2 vote. That ultimately, then the courts got involved again. Somebody appealed that actually up. The Florida Supreme Court at that point determined that law was actually unconstitutional.
And struck the legislative with the big hammer we have.
So, and then we had to start all over. The legislature then had to go back through. The executive branch had input originally, which was what I think partly led to that 10-2 split. But then they had to go back and redo the law again. At that point, it now has to be a unanimous jury verdict, which kind of shows you the interplay of all three of those branches. At the same time, in the state of Florida, there are 386 death row inmates as of April of this year, which is the second highest number of any state in the United States. The highest is actually California, which has 744 death row inmates. There are 31 states within the state of Florida, 31 states within the United States that have a death penalty on the books. There are 19 states that specifically have abolished the death penalty as opposed to that. Other countries, though, other countries also do have the death penalty, some of which, one of them, China, actually has the most executions. However, they don't really share what the numbers are. They have decided that is a state secret over there, unlike over here where you have the legislature actually will those sorts of things are public record and also known or can be found out. Some places will not say whether they have whether judicial executions have taken place, like Middle Eastern countries, Syria,
Syria is no longer is a I mean, it's just a warring faction at this point.
Yes, sir.
But thinking of it as a real country is hard to imagine, but.
Of the number, there were 23 countries that did perform executions in 2016. There were 2 countries that actually had done them in 15 that did not at that point. There were also some countries, though, there were at least 2 countries that did start doing executions again, even though they had not previously, like Botswana and Nigeria both started that. Some had absolutely no executions that were recorded, so they just didn't tell anybody. If they either they didn't have any or they didn't tell anybody, that would be like Chad, India, Jordan, Oman, all of those things.
One country that's overlooked a lot of times, and there's a lot of concern, they say, oh, you know, the world is against it. No, they're not. Japan still has the death penalty, they just haven't executed anyone. India did a couple years ago for some terrorists that happened over there, and both India and Japan do it by hanging. So just thought that would, help out. I've been given the signal that the mind can absorb what the seat can endure, and so that's right at an hour. So if we could take a 10-minute break for benefit of court personnel, as we say, come back with some questions. We're going to be talking about one thing that I'd like to have some input in and talk to you about is the Electoral College. Oh gosh, Rick, how are you going to make that interesting? Trust me, see you back in 10 minutes. Electoral College.